The divorce papers were already on the table when I walked through the door. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a notification that would change my life forever. I didn't look at it yet, but I knew the number. 7 figures, my name, my account. Beatrice was sitting on the couch in the living room, arms crossed, eyes cold, unaware that she was divorcing a man who had just become more than she ever dreamed of. There was a man next to her in an all-black suit, briefcase on his lap, pen already uncapped. He looked like he'd done this 100 times. He probably had. Beatrice looked at me the way you look at something you've already decided to throw away. She slid the papers toward me across the coffee table and said, "Just sign." I looked at the papers. I looked at her, and something in me went very, very still, because she thought she was leaving a broke man. She had no idea who she was walking away from. If you've ever been counted out by someone who should have believed in you, this story is for you. Stay with me, because this one hits different.
Before we continue, subscribe to our channel, like, and share the story. Your support helps us create more inspiring content. Now, let's get back to the story.
Beatrice didn't fall out of love with me. She fell out of patience. For 3 years, I was the man who worked while she slept, the man who ate cold noodles so I could buy equity in a dream she called a hobby. She saw a broke developer. I saw a future she didn't have the vision to wait for. We met when we were both nothing, just 2 young people in a small apartment with a leaking faucet and too much month at the end of every paycheck. Beatrice worked at a boutique downtown. She had taste, she had ambition, and in the beginning, she had patience. I liked to work late, like deep into the night late. My laptop glowed in the dark of the kitchen while she slept. Rice, noodles, budget cuts, paycheck to paycheck, that was us. I didn't complain because I could see the direction things were heading, even when she couldn't. But Beatrice started changing somewhere around year 2. The patience ran out. She'd come home from work, and before she even took off her shoes, there it was, the comparison. My coworker just bought a house. My cousin's husband got promoted again. My mates are doing this. My mates are doing that. Why are we still like this, Marcus? I never argued. That's the thing about me. I don't fight when I'm building. I go quiet, I go still, and I work. She called it a lack of ambition. She said she couldn't see the fire in me, but that's because she was looking at the smoke, not the heat underneath. Every morning I woke up before the sun. I wrote code, I reviewed pull requests, I helped engineer a product that I believed in, a startup none of my family or friends had ever heard of, run by a founder most people in my neighborhood thought was naive. I had taken a small equity stake in the company instead of a higher salary. I did that quietly. I didn't tell Beatrice because every time I mentioned the startup, her eyes glazed over. She didn't believe in it. She barely believed in me. On an ordinary, forgettable Tuesday, the kind that smells like reheated coffee and old deadlines, I was in the middle of a routine code review when my phone lit up. It was an email from the company's CFO. Subject line, acquisition, final numbers. I had known the deal was close. The startup had been in talks with a multinational for months. But knowing something is coming and actually seeing the figure are 2 completely different experiences. I read it 3 times. My shares, the multiplier, the final payout, $1.2 million. At least that's what I'd calculated. The actual number, I'd find out later, was $1.8 million. My hands started to shake, but I remained calm. I sat at my desk, the $1.8 million confirmation glowing against my face. I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a ghost. I had 20 minutes before I had to face her. 20 minutes to decide. Do I tell her we're rich, or do I let her walk away into the life she thinks she deserves? The rice and the noodles, the years of being told I wasn't doing enough, I did it. I did, kept ringing in my mind. I decided right then I was going to plan a dinner, a real one, a celebration. I was going to go to her parents' home, bring gifts, then respectfully show them that the quiet man their daughter had been embarrassed about had arrived. I wanted to do it right. I drove home that evening with a mind full of plans and walked into a room with divorce papers on the table. The house was quiet when I pushed the door open. That should have been the first sign. Beatrice was never quiet. She was sitting on the couch with her arms folded across her chest, her back straight, her jaw set, the posture of someone who had rehearsed this moment. and next to her, a man I had never seen before. All black suit, briefcase balanced on his knees, pen already uncapped, already resting between two fingers like he'd been waiting a while and was accustomed to waiting. He looked like he'd done this 100 times. He probably had. I stood in the doorway for a second longer than I needed to. Not because I was shocked, not because I didn't understand what I was looking at. I stood there because I was running a diagnostic, the way I always do before I touch anything, reading the room, mapping the variables, looking for what the situation actually was beneath what it appeared to be.
Beatrice looked at me the way you look at something you've already decided to throw away. Not with anger, not even with guilt, just with that particular kind of exhaustion that comes after a decision has already been made, when the hard part is over and all that's left is the paperwork. She reached forward and slid a stack of papers across the coffee table toward me. I looked down. I already knew what they were before I read the first line. "Just sign," she said. A lesser man would have made it loud, would have slammed something or raised his voice, or demanded to know how long this had been planned and who else knew, would have said all the things that feel urgent in that moment but accomplish nothing. But I've always been a man who codes, and here's something they don't tell you about this kind of work. You learn over and over again that the first reaction is almost never the right one, that impulsive decisions break systems, that the most destructive thing you can do to a program is touch it before you understand it. So I said nothing about the money. I picked up the papers, I read them slowly, I looked at her face, I looked at the lawyer who was studying a fixed point on the wall behind my head with great concentration, and I thought, calmly and clearly, she made this decision a long time ago. This is just the day she chose to show me. "Why?" I asked. Just that word. I kept my voice even. "I can't keep living like this," Beatrice said. "I want something better. I know there's a better life out there for me. So why should I keep settling?"
Saddling. She used that word, as though 3 years of my quietest, most focused, most determined work, nights bent over a laptop while she slept, rice and noodles, every paycheck stretched thin, every complaint absorbed without argument, as though all of that had been a burden she'd been carrying out of the goodness of her heart, a form of charity she'd been generous enough to extend. I let the words sit in the air between us for a moment. Then I reached forward, picked up the lawyer's pen, and signed my name at the bottom of the page. She was expecting something else. I could feel it. She was braced for the argument, the begging, the raised voice. Her shoulders were tight with anticipation. But I gave her nothing, except the sound of the pen moving across paper. I set it down. And I held on to the papers for just a moment before I let go, not because I was hesitating, but because I wanted to look at her one last time from this side of it. She had no idea what she had just walked away from, and I wasn't going to be the one to tell her. In the weeks after Beatrice left, I had time to sit with everything. I was alone. I thought about the timeline. I thought about the fact that she had arranged this, hired a lawyer, prepared documents, chosen a day, all while I was at work, all while I was building the very thing that would change everything. She had been planning her exit for a while, probably the same period I had been planning the surprise dinner. 2 people in the same apartment, both planning for the future, hers without me in it, mine with her at the center of it. There was something almost poetic about that, if you could hold it at arm's length long enough to see it clearly. I also thought about the family members who had turned their backs during the hard years, the cousins who told me they hadn't forced me to get married, the aunts and uncles who went quiet when I asked for a small loan to keep the lights on, the people who had looked at me like a gamble that wasn't going to pay off. They were all about to get their answer. My phone buzzed. It was Darius, the only person who knew about the equity deal. Did it hit? His text read. I looked at the divorce papers, then back at the phone. Yeah, I typed back. It hit, and she's leaving. Darius replied with the only advice I needed. Let her. A woman who leaves during the harvest doesn't deserve the feast. That's all I needed. That was all I needed to remain focused. Darius helped me think through next steps. Not revenge, not drama. Just what does a man do when suddenly the financial ceiling lifts? What does he do with the space? We talked about investing, we talked about property, we talked about moving. And slowly, the image of the new life started to take shape. Quiet, deliberate, just like the old one, but this time with room to breathe.
Here is what I did not do. I did not announce anything. The wire transfer came through on a Thursday, $1.8 million, not 1.2. Even my calculations had underestimated it. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time that evening, looking at that number, still surprised that my hard work, sleepless night and hard work, had worked beyond my expectation. Then I put the phone face down on the table and made dinner. No social media post, no phone call to the extended family, nothing to Beatrice, nothing to the aunts or the cousins or any of the people who had written me off. I let them all believe what they already believed, that Marcus was still that struggling developer, that Beatrice had done the sensible thing by leaving when she did. I let the silence sit, and then, slowly, I began to move. First, the car. I'd wanted a Range Rover for years, not for show, but because I like things that are built to last. I didn't rush it. I researched, I test drove, I bought it in cash. Then, the apartment. I left the cramped space with the leaking faucet and moved into somewhere with high ceilings and a separate room just for work, a real home office. I remember the first night I set up my laptop in that room. I sat there for a long time before I opened it. Travel. I started going places I had always told myself I'd visit someday. People began to notice an improvement in my lifestyle, and the calls started coming in, slowly at first, then more frequently. Family members who had been silent during the lean years, old acquaintances who had heard things, cousins with investment proposals, aunts asking how I was doing in a way they never had before. I answered some of them. I let others go to voicemail. I wasn't bitter. I was just selective, the way you get when you finally understand that your energy is a resource, not an obligation. 7 months after the divorce, I was invited to a wedding, a mutual friend, the kind of event where you put on your good suit and pretend the past 2 years didn't happen. I pulled up in the Range Rover, handed the key to the valet, walked in. I saw her before she saw me, Beatrice. She looked good. That's the honest truth. She looked well. And then she looked up, saw me step out of the car, and her face did something involuntary. It shifted, just for a second, but I caught it. She walked toward me, her eyes scanning my suit, the valet holding my keys, the confidence she never saw in our kitchen. "I heard you're doing better," she said, her voice searching for a way back in. I didn't give her one. I just looked at her the way she used to look at me, like a stranger I had no more time for. "I heard you're doing better now," she said. "Yeah," I said. "We thank God. Things finally worked out." "You didn't tell me," she said, "about the money, about whatever happened." I looked at her for a moment. "You never asked me if I had plans," I said. "You never trusted or believed in me, so I had nothing to tell." She didn't have an answer for that. And then, right behind her, a man appeared, tall, well-dressed, expensive watch. He put his hand on her shoulder in that easy, familiar way, the way of someone who belongs beside you. I recognized him, tech industry, senior position, doing well by any measure. She hadn't settled for a broke man. She had traded up, at least on paper. She walked back to him, and here is what I understood in that moment. Beatrice hadn't left me because I was broke. She had left me because she didn't believe. And the man she was standing with now, he had money. He had the watch, the suit, the presents. He had everything she had said she wanted. And yet, the way she had walked toward me across that room, the way her voice had changed when she spoke to me, the way her face had shifted when she saw the car. She was with someone who had what she wanted, but I was someone she had wanted. That's a very different thing. And she knew it. She knew it before she walked back to him, and she was going to know it every single time she thought about that moment. She said one last thing before she left. "You changed, Marcus." I smiled, not to wound her, not to win something, just because the answer was so clear to me it almost felt simple. "I don't think I did," I said. "You just don't have access to me the way you used to." She nodded once and walked away. People ask me sometimes if I miss her. Honestly, yes. Pieces of her. The early version. The woman who ate rice and noodles with me and laughed about it. The woman who used to sit on the kitchen counter while I coded and ask me questions about what I was building, even when she didn't understand the answers. That Beatrice, yeah, I miss her. But she left before I became who I was always going to be. And I think on some level, that's the real tragedy of the story. Not the money, not the timing, not the papers on the coffee table. The tragedy is that she made her decision about who I was before the story was finished. I didn't change, I completed. And by the time she saw the final version, standing in the parking lot of that wedding in my suit, next to the car, calm as the eye of a storm, it was too late for her to be part of it. The divorce was filed on the same day the wire transferred. She signed away a millionaire and thought she was leaving a broke man. She was never wrong about me being quiet. She was just wrong about what the quiet meant.